presentation?
Just a second, Bill. Let me open the meeting. This is welcome to the special meeting October 5th of the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. And we do have a quorum here. We do have one item on our agenda today, and it's a resolution that was emailed to legislators on Thursday or Friday. I know it was from Kathy Covert, authorizing 2021 payments for Tompkins County Community College operating budget. So that's our topic today. I think before we put the resolution on the agenda, let us hear from TC3. I want to welcome Dr. Anthea Montague, president of the college, Deb Molinoff, the whatever your title is, Deb, community relations person, and Bill Talbot, interim CFO. So thank you all for being here. Bill, would you like to start us off then?
Sure.
All right. So, Jason, did you have any comments to open us up?
No,
Jason,
but okay. So this is a rather complicated subject, and it can easily take an hour, just go through the baseline. So what I tried to do, since some of you have heard this before and some have not, is to try to streamline the presentation of the issues and then allow free conversations to drive down into specifics. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Good. All right, so just to bring things back to where we are today, we're going to talk a little bit about the original 2021 budget and make sure everybody's aware of what was included in that. Then we're going to talk about the actions of the state and SUNY, and then those impacts on the college. And then we'll talk about the requests of the county. So the original budget, if we go back to 2019-20, before COVID hit, we were within $250,000 of a balanced budget. COVID created huge challenges for the college. We responded to them, but we also found that there were some benefits that came out of COVID, and that is the use of technology to help solve some of our problems, both from a delivery, an educational delivery medium, but also from a process standpoint in which we serve students, whether it be for mental health, whether it be for admissions, whether it be for financial aid. We adopted and used a lot of technology very, very quickly in order to make sure that we could continue our relationship with students and provide them the services that they were looking for. The college also recognized immediately the impact that this was going to have on the college and took steps, creative steps, to try to save some money last year, and knowing that it would need it for this fiscal year 2021. And the college did build $1 million in expense savings through lots of different initiatives, one being a furlough, a very creative furlough. Sorry, okay. One was for a furlough, in which case we were able to save almost $400,000 without harming our employees. That ignores the benefits of the CARES Act, which offset the first $500,000 loss that we had from New York State when they withheld $500,000 from the June payment. That equates to the 20% that you've heard in the public. The budget plans that we have for 2021 include $1.2 million in reduced expenses, majority of those expenses being saved on the salary side from employees. Most of them are positions that over the last year we have not filled, and instead we've kind of restructured some of that work and handed it off to others. Not always are people pleased to know that they have to pick up additional work, but everybody's been working well together to do that. Some of it's also been based on restructuring, and again, using some of the technology benefits that we've been able to put into place, that we could continue our service level with a couple less people. And then just to give you perspective of what the impact is on our fund balance, we're expecting to end 2021 at the same level we had been approved to in 1920. So we'll have 800,000 left in fund balance. The assumptions that went into this year's budget was that we were going to lose 2.4 million in New York State funding. So that equates to, we lost 460,000 due to the legislative changes in the way they provide the funding to the colleges. And then 1.9 million lost due to the 20% cut that we refer to. Now they're saying at this point, it's not officially a cut because nothing's come out in writing. They're just withholding the 20% until some future point that they know whether or not they're getting aid from the feds, and how much aid that's going to be. The second is that you should know that there's a calculation for chargebacks. These are expenses these are revenues that are driven when we receive an educated student that is not within our sponsoring county. We get to charge back the county that student came from. And so it's a formula that's redone every year. And because we had calculated that we were losing 20% or 2.4 million from the state, our county chargebacks increased by about 13%. And so it was about $800,000 that the county chargebacks increased with our current enrollment estimates. So that 800,000 helps to offset the 2.4 million. So that becomes important when you hear what's happening. We increased tuition by 5% and increased our tech fee by $3 per credit. And we had assumed a 24% enrollment reduction for full-time fall students. We came in at 18 students, full-time equivalents short for the fall semester. So we're about $96,000 short from a revenue standpoint for the fall, which is not bad considering we put those forecasts together back in the June timeframe. Deferred maintenance, we elected to wait on deferred maintenance until after everything was done because we understood the impact that this all had both on the counties in addition to us. So that gives you just some background of, where the budget stood before going into these unusual even more unusual times. So here are the state and SUNY actions. The state has delayed their $2 million quarterly payment to us. We usually receive that mid-September. Again, it would have been much higher in previous years, closer to 2.4 million, 2.5 million, but our budget says we're supposed to get 2, and they did not make that payment. Part of the reason they're not making the payment is because SUNY has to approve the budgets before SUNY will make the payment. And SUNY has delayed their approving of the budgets from September until October. They have elected to delay their budget approvals because of the tuition increases that the schools are seeking. And their fear is that during these hard times, they're fearful there'll be some political backlash if they approve any kind of tuition increases. So they're waiting until CUNY has their budget meeting in the beginning of October to see what the impact to the political environment is before SUNY has theirs to approve tuition increases. So because there's no budget approved in October, there cannot be a payment made by the state in October even if they wanted to make the payment. When I requested payment to be scheduled for the beginning of November prior to our first payroll, they came back and said, no, they're probably not going to make a payment until after elections. So I don't know what that means. There's no date as to when that first $2 million is coming in. And the second $2 million is expected in mid to late December, which is typical. So that gives you a little perspective around the quarterly payments. HASC, which is the entity that that monitors and manages TAP, which is a tuition assistance program specific to New York State, typically awards a prepayment for the fall semester in the June timeframe. So it's 65% of the roster of the kids that are registered as of that point in time. And it should have been about a $400,000 payment made to us, and they have made no payments. In addition, we received word through SUNY that HASC was not going to be making any payments for a while, and that the college should step up and make 100% payment on behalf of the state for TAP. That for us would be about $1 million. And then we heard in the same conversation, but the state is only going to reimburse you at 80%. It's going to retain that same 20% that it is across all grants. And so that may also represent a $2 million revenue shortage. We, and I do believe there are other colleges in the same situation, are not in a sufficient cash flow situation to be able to advance $1 million that's not our money for the students, for refunds to the students. We would not harm students if we were not to receive any money. As in other words, we wouldn't send them to collections or make them reimburse us for that money. That I think all the colleges agreed to. But as far as advancing money that they would be able to use for day-to-day expenses, some of the colleges just are not in a financial position to be able to do that. It has been mandated by by SUNY that we do it. But again, enough of the schools are saying that we just don't have it. We'd love to be able to do that. If we had the cash, we wouldn't think twice about it, but we literally don't have the cash to do that. So that gives you some perspective of what's going on with HASC. We do not know when or if and they're going to send us any money and how soon that will be. We have made arrangements that if students really have issues, whether it be in getting back and forth to school, whether it be making a rent payment, all those kind of things they rely heavily on TAP for, we will do our best to help accommodate them on a case-by-case basis. And that's the position that we're taking as of this point in time. Third thing is that SUNY has requested that we refile our budget and assume 100% state aid. So when we put our budget together, as you recall, we assumed 80% because there was a 20% cut. And that's what we built our budget around. That gave us that $800,000 from the county chargebacks. Instead, they want us to refile at 100%, meaning that we don't get the county chargebacks. And yet we're not sure if we'll get 100% of state aid. And the fear was that if we do that, then we could jeopardize ever getting the county chargebacks. Because there are rules that say you will bill within 45 days of the beginning of the semester. SUNY believes they understand the law well enough, educational law, that says as long as you bill the first time, you can rebill the proper amount if the state drops back down to 80%, and you should be able to collect that from the counties. We don't know if the counties will recognize that interpretation or not. So we're looking at $400,000 shortfall in cash for the fall and another $400,000 in the spring, and maybe
Bill,
impact.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really don't understand the relationship between a budget that assumes 100% state aid and the timing of the chargebacks. Could you perhaps explain that?
Sure. So,
and also, yeah, I was going to ask for more clarification on that. And also, how does the budget determine the chargeback amount?
okay, so let's start with the 100% versus the 80%. We thought it was responsible of us to build the budget around what was likely to happen. We have been told the state is not going to make 20% of its payments. We've seen that in the press. We've been told that through SUNY. So that was our responsibility, is that we would build the budget around that assumption set. SUNY is saying that because it's not in writing that you will never get that money, that the state is referring to that not as a cut, but as a delay in payment, is that you cannot submit a budget for less than 100%, or SUNY board will not approve it. So that's the difference between the 80 and the 100%. The chargeback is nothing more than a formula that all schools use that look at the revenue sources, and it comes up with a chargeback rate for that particular school. Those chargeback rates range from the low $3,000 per FTE up to $12,000 per FTE, depending on the school.
Right, but how does having a 100% budget versus an 80% budget affect chargebacks? You know, we don't, this is not language we really get.
Okay, so when you look at the revenue sources, the state is a big revenue source. They are now not paying $2.4 million in revenue to the college. Therefore, the formula compensates with higher charges to the counties as the state pulls back its payments.
Okay, so if the budget shows 100% funding from the state, the chargebacks will be less. If the budget is 80%, if the budget is based on 80%, then counties have to pay more. And so, but they're, so it's a fiction. They want you to submit a fictional budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Now, Martha, since our conversation, we have had conversations with those that are closer to the governor, to Albany. And the belief is that the governor wishes to see all the schools put in for 100%, because then he wants to have to slash it to the 80% to show what the real impact of the feds not providing services are. So if all these budgets came in at 80%, there's nothing to slash. So part of it is, you know, a show to show the impact. Now that's hearsay. We can't get any, nobody's going to tell you exactly what's happening, but that is the belief as to why that mandate has come down.
I think Bill is mostly right. I think what they don't want is documentation that they aren't giving us the 100%, right? So
Correct.
if we all submit budgets with a reduction, then it will be on official record that the state has reduced us. They don't want it to appear on paper in public that we have been reduced. They don't actually want to cut us at all. I believe in my heart of hearts that they would love to just keep everybody with what they promised, but the impact of the pandemic has made for some challenging political footballs being tossed around in Albany.
At the same time, we're also getting unfunded mandates. So when we talk about having to expand how we're doing testing in our campus, and I know on the president's calls with the chancellor, we've all been saying, okay, how's it going to be funded? And it's just chirp, chirp, chirp. They want us to figure it out within the confines of our budget. But that's like just squeezing extra blood from that turnip that really isn't there, because we have to play this song and dance about, we know you're cutting us at least 20%, but we just can't talk about it. And we have asked for, I did ask for a meeting with the chancellor. I sent him an email. I've yet to hear a response to talk through this and what the impact would be for our institution. I'm still waiting to hear, but I know that there is a president's call, a general president's call this Wednesday afternoon.
The other possibility too is, because SUNY is requested to refile the budget, if CUNY takes a lot of heat for their tuition increases, if they were to come back and say no tuition increases for the SUNY schools either, we would be in jeopardy of losing another 600,000, both in
Right.
cash and in this time would also be revenue. So that kind of gives you some perspective of what the state's doing, what SUNY's doing, what the two of them are doing to us together.
And that loss of tuition increase is not something that presumably, if there is federal aid that comes through and they could restore from 80% to 100%, the tuition is just not coming.
Correct.
Right, okay. I see Henry's got his hand up.
Yeah, Bill, how much of tuition increase is SUNY seeking?
It ranges. I don't think I saw anybody request more than 5%. I think the general increases are 3 to 4%, at least on the community college side. I'm not aware about the four-year schools.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, even with that 5%, it doesn't make us the highest priced college. So everybody's got their own revenue model. Okay, so here it gives you kind of a summary of the impacts. So the cash shortage we're talking about most likely is 2.6 million. So this, again, this is when I say cash short, when we're talking about cash, I'm talking about that it's not necessarily always a revenue impact, a long-term, it's a short-term, it's a timing issue. So right now we're looking at, what could be a $2.6 million cash flow issue. 2 million of it theoretically will eventually get to us from the state. That's at the 80%. 200,000 may never get to us if they make the 20% cut from the TAP, and a portion of the 400,000 from the county chargebacks for the fall, I'm assuming would not get to us. But the big fear, and this is why it's such a large number we're asking for, is because of the process it takes to borrow these funds. I'm afraid, because they said they were going to wait until after the election, are they waiting for a package to be identified after the election? And would there be any delay in the second payment also beyond December? And if they did, we would have a real hard time if we didn't get both payments from the state in December. So that's really important. From a revenue perspective, the only highly confident situation we have for revenue losses right now is the 200,000 for the TAP for this semester. Otherwise, the others we're still not sure until it plays out. Whether tuition will have an impact and or whether the counties will honor their incremental chargebacks to us. SUNY seems to feel as though neither one you need to worry about right now, that they're highly improbable to occur, that all the counties will make their second payment and tuition will not be a factor. It's just too early. That's the guidance they've provided to us. But the 200,000 seems likely. Are there any questions? Okay. All right, so here's the ask. Okay, that Tompkins advance all four payments of 2021, equating to $3,067,000 and change, and that they provide that in the October timeframe. It is to cover. The best way to describe it is to cover the $2 million late payment from the state and the $400,000 delay in the chargebacks. If the state makes the payment in December, then the cash that we're currently borrowing through the consortium, through a delay in 90 days of payables at 1.3 million will be made. That payment will be made at the end of the year so that they're whole and they can go through their audit nice and clean. College is just, the college is making a request also of Cortland for an advancement of 900,000. That's 2 of their 4 payments. And so we're meeting with their finance committee tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. And then the college is actively also assessing restructuring plans that will begin to generate savings as early as spring. We knew we had to do this anyways as part of the budget. We talked about that because we're using $1 million this year, we need to find $1 million worth of savings. The only other thing that is not on here that has become a little bit more concerning, and I'll brief you probably next time we get together, is the spring semester. The number of applications is lower than we typically see. We are taking action to try to restructure, refocus, and are contemplating some type of discounting to get students back into the college, local students. So more on that next time we meet when we give you an update. Questions? And that's my whole presentation. Deborah?
Yes,
Thank you, Bill.
you. You say that if the state payments are current in December, that means both the first and second quarter statements are received in December. You're going to use that money to bring the consortium payables up to date. And what if they don't? I mean, who's going to make the consortium whole?
Okay, so when we've talked in the past, the college has a cash flow issue. The college does not have sufficient cash during 2 periods of the year when we are offering services, but we have not received the monies from the state through natural causes. It's just the way the funds, the way the cash flows. So in the July and August timeframe, we usually are right down to our last dollar, and sometimes we've actually had to reach out to the counties and get an advance of 1 to 2 quarters to make those payments. And then, by the way, the next month we've got $8 million sitting in the bank, $6 million sitting in the bank when all the money comes in. And then we have the same problem in January into February, where again, because we don't receive those, especially the federal funds for students enrollment, for student enrollments until end of February, beginning of March, we are usually very short at that point too, and have borrowed monies in the past. And the question becomes, how do we establish some type of line of credit that allows us to borrow against that money and returning it in the months that we have the cash? It's a very up and down type thing. Our cash swings $6 to $8 million in 4 to 5 months periods. So we don't have a solution to that. What's happening here with the state making a $2.4 million cut and then enrollments naturally decreasing because we're in a COVID situation has just made it incredibly hard to maintain any type of stability from a cash standpoint. Even if we're making cuts, we can't control the cash flow.
So I guess,
Bill,
Deb, if I'm hearing what you're asking, if this resolution passed, you all are able to advance the payments from next year to this year now. When the December payment comes time for the consortium, regardless of what the state does, whether it's 80% that they give us both of those, or if they don't give us anything at all, will the consortium be able to get their money for their payment for the December? Yes, Deb?
Yeah, I know that they'll be able to get their money because they'll either get it from you or they'll get it from us. But you know, getting it from us means it's not going to be in advance because we've already advanced you everything there is to advance. So do you can borrow from us?
Okay.
And has that happened before? And if so, has it been repaid?
I'm not in tune with all the rules and regulations on the public side. I do know that I am prohibited from going to, like, let's say a bank to borrow money or to set up a line of credit of any kind. So I
So
am,
maybe Jason or Rick could answer this
Yeah, I could
question.
speak to
All right,
that.
if I could just ask first, Bill, if you can unshare your screen so we can see everybody. We've got a couple of
sure.
here. And Jason had stepped away, so I can't, without seeing the whole screen, not sure if you, Jason, are you there yet? Are you back?
Yep, Jason's back. I can see him.
Jason's back. All
Right.
right. So Jason, do you want to address the question of the? Bill,
What was
can
the
you-
question again? I'm sorry.
Almost here.
All right, Bill. Okay, there we go.
The question is, if they don't get their quarterly payments,
Right.
and they therefore cannot pay the consortium, they're going to obviously have to come back to us and or Cortland County to borrow money.
Yep.
Okay, because there's no more money to be advanced. So I guess my question is, in the past, has this happened? Have we loaned money and has it been repaid?
I don't think we've done it in the past. So to answer your question, I don't think we've loaned money to TC3 in this sense. Obviously, we've advanced payments, we've re-amortized debt, but I don't know that we've loaned money straight out like this. In that scenario where you'd have 2 delayed quarterly payments, that we have not loaned money to that in some form of agreement for repayment.
Rick, did you want to add anything to that?
No, since I've been here, we met TC3 at 3 times in the past to help their cash shortages. The first time was when we tried to make our New York State retirement payment at the end of the year. We found that always hit them at the worst time of the year, and try to get $1 million or $900,000 at the end of the year was almost impossible. So we structured 4 or 5 years ago installment payments where they could make payments like 10 payments a year to us, and that eased the cash flow burden on them. And that's been working pretty successfully for the last 4 or 5 years.
For the retirement system.
Yes, because we have to pay that bill up front, and then we bill the library and TC3 for their portion.
Okay, how about the
Working
consortium?
successfully for TC3 ever since. Although this year they've just made 6 payments, and I need to alert you that they still owe us the remaining 6 payments for the rest of this year to the tune of $480,000. So that's got to be in your calculations, Bill. Also, is that final true up for the retirement bill, which should be coming out of our office, at least an estimate within the next week or 2. And then a couple of years went by and they brought to us the re-amortization of debt because they were having problems with meeting the repayment of principal and interest on bonded debt. And so you'll remember I believe it was just like 2 years ago, legislature to refinance or re-amortize that debt over a longer period of time. That payment for this year, I haven't seen anywhere in these calculations. That's due for this year also, and that's another $318,000. And I'm not sure if that comes out of a different fund, Bill, a capital fund.
It does. We have some of it sitting there.
Okay.
It comes directly from the cross-county chargebacks or the county chargebacks. So we do have probably 70% of that sitting there.
Right. So that's helped
Okay.
them some. And then the third thing that we did was when we went with the prepayments. The last couple of years, we were paying either 1 quarter or 2 quarter of prepayments, usually in November or December, ahead of time to cure the recurring cash flow needs that would hit them at year end in November and December. This year, of course, being magnified to the tune of where we're contemplating paying all 4 payments up front. So those are the 3 things, but never have we actually loaned them. We have severe restrictions. We met with the bond attorney a number of
Okay, all right. I
and he
think-
wasn't able to give us a formula on how we could legally do that. At best, we could loan them money to the end of a fiscal year, but then it would have to be paid back by the end of a fiscal year, and that doesn't work in this case.
All right, thank you very much, Rick. Let's go to Henry and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, just a few quick questions. Did you guys, when we gave you earlier payments the last couple of years, did you also see earlier payments from Cortland County?
Don't forget, I've only been here a year, but I will tell you last year when I did request a prepayment from Tompkins. Cortland did make a prepayment.
Okay. And why
They
haven't
also restructured, Henry Cortland also, we did the restructuring of the bonds with them at the same
Okay.
time that we did Tompkins County as well.
okay. And what are you asking for a full payment from Cortland County for this year, for going into next year?
I didn't hear you.
Question,
Why,
Henry.
why are you not asking for Cortland to also prepay the entire amount?
It's a good question. The thought at the time was that it would be more difficult for them to find the cash to make the 4 payments than it was for them to make the 2 payments.
Okay. I also, I guess
Henry,
I,
just to add, I did ask that question at Tuesday's meeting, and they confirmed they could not make all 4 payments up front. They said they could only make the first 2 quarters.
okay. And I know that I saw the town hall that you guys did, and there was something about there were 5 other colleges that were going through the same fiscal problems. Have you consulted with them, and what are they doing?
I have not consulted with them. My understanding of one of the colleges, and I won't name which one, they have a fund balance deficit in excess of $4 million. And I don't know how they got to that point. So I think because it's based upon all the different counties and the relationships they have with their counties, that is going to be a unique solution for each of those colleges. Some are dual sponsored counties. I think one is at least another dual sponsored county, but the most of them are singular counties.
Okay,
So I
thank
don't
you.
have an answer to that one, Henry. It's interesting because while we're all SUNY and we all want to share information, there's some information that each college doesn't want to share. And that's just the way it kind of shakes out.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Lane.
Bill, at Tuesday's meeting, Cortland, as you say, we asked for the 4 payments, and then they said they couldn't do that. We said, well, can you make 2 payments? And they said, maybe. So you're going to find out more about that tomorrow, hopefully.
That's correct.
What's worst case if they can't come forward with a payment? How, and we do,
What's the
does that
dollar
make
amount for their 2 payments, Bill? Do you know?
Yeah, it's 900,000 for their 2 payments.
Another million.
It won't have an immediate impact, Mike. And the reason why I say that is because if SUNY is correct, and if the state makes their $2 million payment in November, then we're okay. It wouldn't have been, it would be all right. My fear though is we won't know, and a week will go by and they'll be like, well, maybe we'll find out next week, and maybe we'll find back next week. And then they don't make that second payment in addition to the first. I can't come to you guys and ask for it with 2 weeks left. And that's the challenges that I have is, and when they ask for input from the business managers relative to TAP, it's not just the TAP issue of not payment to the students and asking us to pick it up. It's that we have no financial foundation by which to manage anything. I don't know what's coming, when it's coming, or how it's coming. And I don't know how to manage the business if I have no clue whether something's going to happen or they're going to renege or there's going to be another delay. And so, I spend more of my time thinking about what's going to happen if we just don't make payroll, and how do we proceed? How do we make sure that we teach out students and keep the teachers going at least while others are forced into a furlough that, by the way, we will get sued and we will have to have paid that. We cannot put people on furloughs. Not legally. So, but it would delay the cash requirements until some future date. So,
But I'd rather not have that part of our conversation in this very public forum.
yeah,
Because there are legal things around the various contracts and notification, and we're not there yet. What we're trying to do is to be proactive in all that we can before, or if we would need to go down that road. So.
Okay, that forecloses my next question then. I won't ask it.
Okay.
All right, before I go to Henry, again, are there any other questions? Anyone else? Henry?
Yes, you talked about that they wouldn't decide until after the election, but in theory, if a stimulus bill is going to pass, it's going to pass before the election. Is there any kind of wiggle room there that if a stimulus bill passes like this week, that they would make the payment earlier?
I don't think we know, Henry.
Yeah.
There's everything between the state government, the federal government is also uncertain. We really don't know. It's odd that they would even make the assumption to say, wait and see what happens in the elections, because states still have to function regardless of what happens in the election. So we
Right.
have no real idea of that.
Right, but you can understand, since the state's fiscal year goes till March 31st,
Right.
no bright line there, and if something happens in December versus January versus February, it doesn't matter that much to them.
Right.
Obviously, it matters to us because we're a December 31st year,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't even get into your fiscal year. So
And ours is, yeah.
but
September to August.
I mean, they're doing the same thing to us. They've withheld 20% of our reimbursements for millions of dollars worth of services we provide. But because they're not calling it a cut, because they haven't called it a permanent decision, they are sort of reserving that talking point, if you will, to say, and I guess I don't know when they're going to use that talking point. If they're trying to say, oh, you didn't pass anything, now see, we're going to have to cut these millions of dollars, well, then it seems to me too late. I mean, then they've already gone ahead and failed to pass. So it's hard to imagine what the mechanics and the politics are, but they're doing the same thing to us.
Yeah.
Did you say that there were 5 other colleges in this kind of situation?
I think there are 4 or 5.
Okay, and how many, forgive me, but how many community colleges altogether in the state?
There are 30 community colleges.
Okay.
SUNY is 64 system altogether. Some are universities and some are state operated colleges and then community colleges.
All right, so there are 4 or 5 other community colleges in this kind of a bind out of 30, which makes you very much a minority that doesn't.
And there could be more, but again, sometimes the conversation doesn't always occur in that manner. In speaking with my colleagues, I have one that I know is not in the same 4 or 5 cluster that I was talking about, but they're very much on the brink of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's contingent upon the fund balance situation and the
Right.
county sponsor situation for each of those different colleges. So
Correct.
they're on paper, they may look like all of those have, let's say, a similar cash flow problem. But they have very different tools and different toolboxes that they can use to
That
solve.
they can, utilize.
Mike Lane?
I think Deborah was ahead of me.
Oh, I didn't see Deborah's.
That's okay, Mike, you go ahead. I can wait.
right,
Bill,
go ahead.
you mentioned, and you did last Tuesday too, this idea of beginning the discussion about what might be needed in restructuring if there are these changes at the state funding level. I think some of our legislators are wondering about restructuring also, and what we're doing for workforce and businesses, for example, and should we be making changes along those lines? And maybe Orinthia could be helpful here, but I was wondering about whether some folks from the college could make a presentation to us about the BIZ program and other things that are happening, the micro-credentialing to help our businesses train the people for their needs. I think that would be very useful for some
Absolutely,
of our
we can do that, Mike, because we would love to tell you about some grants that we received from the state that would help workforce that we may not get because of this hole now. And so we would love to tell you where we were poised, how we were on track to address our enrollment and budget concerns and what this impact has meant for us. So yeah, Deb, you and Carrie can work on that from our biz department, certainly. And even on their enrollment side.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah?
Yes. The purpose of this meeting is to authorize the prepayment of next year's funds. I don't think anyone here has a problem with doing that. The problem is that this is, in a way, just a Band-Aid on a long-term issue of the sustainability of the college's business model. And so I understand that Orinthia doesn't want to go into that in depth in a public meeting, but at some point we are going to have to address that. And
Absolutely.
I'm afraid I'm the one that Mike's referring to that really has been chomping at the bit to figure out a way that all of the people in the two counties who have inroads in the business community and workforce development could sit down with y'all at the college and try to put some sort of task force together that would be able to develop some really attractive micro-credentialing, pre-apprenticeship, and vocational programs. Not that would eclipse your academic programs, but that would support those programs, because I realize that the current dumpster fire that we're all having to deal with is not your fault, but it is our new reality. And
Correct.
the business plan that we've had in the past is clearly not going to work in this reality.
Correct. And again, I'll just say, so in my review of the college's structure, prior to me even taking the job in 2017, to me, as an outsider looking in the administration of another institution, we had some glaring issues there. And so it took us the full 3 years to kind of right size and figure that out. We are very much on board with new programs. We have to be careful. And actually, Deb can speak to that. We had someone reach out to us through our Strong Start. So Deb, talk about that first, because it ties back into workforce development.
Yeah, we are actually an authorized Startup New York location. Whether or not there's funding available for that anymore at the state, I'm not sure, but we are having more and more manufacturing companies. The person that emailed this morning was from a local welding and fabrication business. So we are moving forward as fast as we can in identifying some of the needs of workforce and getting some of these up and running. A lot of that is pretty time intensive, and we really need to figure out how to take a look at the overall operations of the college and put a comprehensive program analysis in place, but then also put some pieces in place so when we have businesses come to us like this welding and fabrication business did this morning, that we are able to work with them and that we have a very easy menu by which we can work. It's no longer that everyone has to come to us and get an associate's degree, right? Which I think is that old model that maybe Orinthia was referring to, that when she came on board, that was really a traditional community college model. It is what we are rated on and funded on by the state. Don't get us started on completion rates and how they determine what completion or success is for a student at a community college. It's very interesting metrics that we struggle against every year with that as well. So I think what we really need to do is to find out, we've got much better handle now on data. Well, we had a better handle on data before the pandemic. I'm not sure what professions
we are right now.
more in need after the pandemic. A great example is that we just applied for and were approved for a CNA program, right? So that's exactly one of the things that you're talking about. It's a high demand job in the healthcare industry, CNAs, and We did a collaborative partnership with other community colleges. There's a cohort of 20 people in sort of this short-term credentialing process. So they're not earning their associate's degree, but they are earning a CNA, which will land them a job. And we are working with Cayuga Med and Guthrie for placements for those people. So when you go in, you end up with that career tracking and that career pathway all at the same time. We are
some of the other
headed in that direction. We just were paused by COVID, unfortunately, as we all were.
and Deborah, for some of the other technical workforce programs, I would have loved to jump into, construction technology, all of these other things. One of the things we have to consider, if it is a program where the workforce needs individual, we have to figure out if we're going to have equipment or whatnot for them to use. Because when I tell you that our materials handling classroom at the college, I would want to say it's from like 1970 update. And so again, being able to have the equipment for the individuals to get the training on, Deb and Carrie will work with any workforce who perhaps we can utilize their equipment for the training and hold the classes at their location, because we certainly wouldn't have the money to buy and outfit anything on campus. And because things fluctuate, I don't know that we'd want to make that investment in that. It's better to use their resources. We provide the students, they provide those resources to get them back into the job market. So absolutely, I'm
Perfect
very
sense.
open to sitting and doing that. There's actually a President's Cabinet retreat on Monday where we're going to talk about some of these things.
Before I go back to Henry, I wanted to ask, so you're saying that, Deb, you said, am I getting that there's a tension between how much energy you put into, say, credentialing for direct job placement versus versus 2-year associate degree students, in that the FTE aid doesn't count for the first at all? Is that what you're saying?
It's a little more complicated than that, but basically, yes. And we don't want to eliminate the excellent reputation that our local community college has in terms of sending students from here to Cornell, here to Cortland, here to Brentwood. That's been our bread and butter. We want to continue that. So what we need to do is take that and not really disrupt that, because that's something we've been doing well. But we know that we need to diversify if we are going to increase our enrollment
And respond to our community with that.
Okay, but if there's a, we can't shift the whole business model too much, and then we lose the FTE aid. Another question I had was about international students. In the past, that's been a big source of revenue. How is that affecting you? And is this part of
our international revenue is almost non-existent at this point because of the restrictions on travel, because there's a fear for even those who can come that they don't want to come based upon the national rhetoric of the US is not handling the virus well. I mean, so that's a reality we have to deal with. Our provost is trying to work with some of our international partners, where because now we have some classrooms where you can do the live instruction, so they'd still be able to get that instruction. And so I know he is working on that, but again, these agreements will take a little bit more time. We had a strong Disney program where we had at least 30 students in the Disney program. Well, Disney paused their program. They don't know what it's going to look like for spring. And so again, some of the things that we have done traditionally, we're in limbo as other people figure out how they're going to manifest and do things. We had conversations with our global partners who generally came in this summer, and they were contemplating coming this fall at a later start date. Now they've pushed that back to saying, okay, parents aren't comfortable with their students coming. What I think would be a plus for them as we go back and we have these continued conversations is to share with them that while we're not saying it's 100% safe, TC3 has had a very small number of cases, no residential, knock on wood, cases in our campus. And so we will use that to the best we can for them to feel like even if they're coming to the States, if you're not going to like a hotspot in Texas or perhaps one of the downstate schools, you're coming here where the outbreak has been minimal.
right? Not going. But
Yep.
here as well. All right, thank you. And I also would just say, I think a year from now, Lord, I hope we're in a completely different environment. So, Henry?
Yes, I know that enrollment has dropped the last 2 years. Can you basically talk about the demographics of that enrollment? Because I know that the Northeast is dropping in terms of attendance. Anything else that you guys have any ideas about enrollment?
Our enrollment, because we had, I think last year we had 450 roughly students in the residence hall, primarily from the downstate or out of our 6 donut counties. We have seen a significant decrease. We currently have, and part of it is response to COVID and trying to thin out the population, but I think we maxed out at 230 students for this semester. And so I think it's going to continue to be impactful in that way, because if I'm a student who wants to, I have no need to come here and do online if you're telling me everything is going remote. And so that's like that fight that we're in of, okay, how do we make it as attractive to them? And honestly, Henry, we were on track to make our enrollment goal for this year. We just didn't because COVID happened. And so 2 years ago, I know we've seen increases. We've redid our budget to move from this mentality of full-time enrollment, recognizing that our part-time enrollment was increasing. And so being able to manage that, as well as our concurrent enrollment students, that has given us, I think, a little bit of lift in this whole situation. As I think those numbers are pretty much still on track, with the state allowing resident certificates to, you don't have to like go in person and request it anymore. That has helped. Additionally, with the state now saying that they will allow late start classes for us, that has helped. We have a bit more late start offerings. And so enrollment wise, we're hopeful, but I think, and I keep going back to this, but the whole COVID thing has people in a limbo on what they want that decision to be for their next step, regardless. They're in limbo. They don't know what to do. And we see the job market, and yes, there are more jobs out there, but I'm afraid to leave my house. And so, which one, how am I going to balance that? But enrollment wise, we were on track to make our fall enrollment.
Or I could get a job, but what do my kids do? So,
Correct.
all right, let's get this resolution on the floor. I think it's time for that. Would somebody want to move that? Moved by Deborah, seconded by Mike Lane. All right, that's authorizing 2021 payments for Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget. It's ID number 9607. And the bottom line is 4 payments adding up to $3,076,216 to go out this month. Are there any other questions? Is there any discussion? Any more discussion? Henry, and then Mike.
Yes, could I ask Jason whether there's any downside to this, any risk that we're taking in terms of voting for this?
I think you guys have covered the gamut of issues. I mean, bigger issue, obviously, this provides, the issue is not a cash flow issue. The issue is the structural budget challenges that TC3 faces. So I think, Bill and, Dr. O, Bill, Deb have all covered, I think, the gamut of issues related to the challenges they face. As far as on our end, I don't think, it's an advancement of obligation that we would have already made to them anyways. So other than distributing it on a quarterly basis, it's not going to create that crippling of a cash position for us or any crippling position. So I think we have the wherewithal to do it. The bigger issue as we're dealing with, as you're dealing with the county budget, is the unknown factor. And that is what I think is so challenging and unnerving in this process is, what's going to happen next, what between now and January, what's going to happen, then what's going to happen when the governor's budget comes out, and then what's going to happen when it's adopted. I mean, you've got a lot of unknowns. So I don't think there's anything else here that you aren't already aware of. I don't think it's opens this up to any new exposure or anything else. I think it's just, you're just advancing your obligation to them, a year in advance. I don't know, Rick, did you have anything you'd want to add to that, or?
No, only that it's marked as a prepayment for this year, which is, it's like an asset on our books, and it's reversed at the beginning of the next year to show the true expense in the appropriate fiscal year for us.
Okay.
Mike Lane?
Bill, you mentioned before what your payroll was. Could you reiterate that, please?
Sure, it's about $750,000 every 2 weeks.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask Jason, I think after we met last week, you said you were going to check in with NISAC and see what they were hearing from other counties.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a well positioned issue with them in terms of, like you said, there's only 4 or 5 other community colleges. Ryan Gregory was someone has been aware of this from the beginning, so they're aware of it. But there was some communication out a little while ago, I think, about chargebacks. But again, nothing that addresses this issue. I mean, the issue of the state not making full payments is not a new issue, unfortunately. So they're battling that front on every funding, every piece of revenue and aid we get, whether it's us or community colleges. So it's just, there's nothing special about it. I mean, I don't mean to belittle it, but they're not doing anything unique about it.
All right. Is there anything else to say? Any other questions? All right. I really do mean what I said. All I can hope and pray is that a year from now, we're in a very different situation. And in less than a year from now, we're in a very different situation. And there has been a fair amount in the press about negotiations on a federal deal, sort of behind the scenes. And of course, even if they come up with a top line number, we and Cuomo and everybody else don't know what number what might trickle down to higher education and what might trickle to community colleges specifically. But there does seem to be some movement, and I guess we can all hope. All right, if that is, that's all there is, let's take a vote on the resolution. So can I ask Deborah?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Dave McKenna?
Yes.
And I don't see Shauna, so she's not here. And I'm a yes, so that is unanimous. All right, well, this will go to the full legislature tomorrow evening. I would ask that a couple of you be there for our deliberations on the legislature meeting, and we can ask Leslyn to make sure this comes up very early in the meeting, so you don't have the pleasure of our full agenda tomorrow night. So, and Orinthia, I just want to say your background is very nicely matched with your blouse. Well done.
The best I could do.
It's great, and we should all, pay attention. Nice style. So,
And here's my visitor. She's just visiting.
oh, wonderful, beautiful.
But they're
Bill, are you
for a
back
little while.
in Dryden, or are you still at home?
I'm at home. I can't drive. You don't want me driving.
How about Bill?
What happened to your knee?
Bill's on campus.
I'm on campus.
You're on campus.
I have to go to Cortland physically to their chambers.
Okay.
To your knee, Orinthia?
Oh, I had a total left knee replacement. I've had a bad knee now for about 30 years because I used to play sports in high school, then after college, and the cortisone shots stopped working. So when I'm walking, it would just give out. So that's no good. So Dr. Blake from Cayuga Orthopedics did it.
She did my hip
Fantastic.
last year.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, so
All
I'm still
right,
doing
well-
physical therapy at home. I'm still on the pain meds, which is why I don't want to drive. And then the stitches are still in. It's only been about 12 days.
Oh, well, then you're doing great.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that
Okay.
title has been very enlightening. Thank you both.
Thank you all so
Dr.
much.
O. Thank you, Bill, and our thanks to Deb, who had to leave for another meeting. We really appreciate everything that you're doing, and we'll hang in there with you. So
Thank you.
a motion to adjourn, moved by Deb, seconded by Dave, and all vote, raise your hands to adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks to staff for holding this meeting. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
you.